A question that we received from a lot of different people, Jim, is to get your thoughts on recent comments from CM Punk on Twitter after the WWE talent releases. Did you see this?
I did not see CM Punk's comments, no.
Okay, so this is from June 2nd, and someone named John Squires tweeted out, "One thing that has consistently bummed me out about WWE in recent years is that there's been a wealth of incredible talent in that company, but they rarely seem to really know what to do with any of it. The latest wave of releases is a truly stunning reflection of that issue." To which CM Punk replied on Twitter, "It's like a movie with a blockbuster budget and cast, but if it's written by creatively bankrupt nincompoops, specifically for an audience of one, in a language nobody understands anymore, it's trash. But people watch it because they like movies."
I don't know if I could have put it better myself.
He is so good on Twitter, isn't he?
He's very good to the point. I tend to meander a little bit sometimes. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? That's the thing, is there are still a lot of people that watch wrestling because it's been the thing that they always did. And if you go back 20 years when WCW closed, WCW had sucked most of the time that Turner Broadcasting had owned it. But those old-time wrestling fans stuck with it. They got the brief pop from the Monday Night Wars, and then everything fell in a hole. And when WCW went away, then all those people, they didn't start watching Raw. They just left. They went away because they wanted the old NWA wrestling. That was the offshoot. I've said, and WWF then has been bleeding viewers when all of the talent that was over has gradually turned over, and nobody in turn has gotten over. And part of it is because the creative, part of it's because of the talent, part of it's because the damage that's been done to the wrestling business, and everybody knows it's all caca, and why take it seriously anymore? But you see that every so often. You lose people that don't come back because of shit like he just said and shit like they've seen in the past. They lose faith, they lose patience, but it takes, for wrestling fans, it's traditionally taken a long time for that to happen. And, you know, we're seeing the end of it now because there's not much farther it can go in terms of down until it's nobody. But that was the thing, is wrestling fans, when wrestling started really sucking, it was like a long abusive relationship. You knew it wasn't going to end well, but you didn't want to bring it to an end right then because it had meant so much to you. And it took a long time to drive that many wrestling fans off. And you used to see it in pockets of the country with a dying territory. The Bruisers Indiana in the last days, or the Sheiks Detroit in the last days, or, you know, Southwest Championship Wrestling over the last days wasn't, you know, Kansas City. The talent goes away, and they weren't doing phony, silly shit. They just lost their talent and had nothing hot going on and aged out in all those instances. And then finally people just say, well, we'll quit. But it takes a while. But we've reached the point now where there's, as I said, there's not much more room to go. So, you know, Punk summarized it there, but it is an abusive relationship with wrestling and the wrestling fans. We have been driving them away since the first corporate ownership, TBS, in 80. So we've been driving them away for 30 years. And finally, we've finished off running off most of them.
What do you think about the outrage that we see now every time there's any layoffs or anytime any wrestlers are released? I mean, obviously, there has to be some churn. And you have to refresh the roster. And we said Braun Strowman's been a main guy, but he's making a lot of money, and they don't see him at that level anymore. And what do? He's making all that money. I mean, it's not like, I shouldn't say that. I mean, everyone has their fans. Everyone has their favorites. Everyone likes other people. Everyone enjoys working with other people. But sometimes, I mean, just 6 releases or whatever it was, 7 releases, and people lose their minds.
Well, because they hear how much money that the WWE is making. And then they go, well, and they can't pay these poor wrestlers. The wrestlers are sympathetic. That's what I told Tony Khan, when I first talked to him, or I would have told him if we'd had a conversation, because there's an NDA signed. Let me back up on that. But basically, I said, at this point in time, Vince McMahon is the evil empire. The people have never before been so sympathetic to the wrestler's plight. And if you capitalize on that and take advantage of that by presenting a different company than WWE as the one that cares about the wrestlers and the wrestlers are involved, I never dreamed it would actually be a shoot. But if the wrestlers are involved and you know, we listen to their concerns, then you already, it's like a continuation of what they were doing with the elite group and everything. They were doing giant crowdfunding. Yeah, we can draw 10,000 people in Chicago. Of course we can. We'll rent this building, and because everybody from around the world, even if they couldn't get there, they bought a fucking ticket because they wanted to fucking stick it to Vince McMahon and the WWF. It was a giant crowdfunding thing, and they got swept up in the mania. But then here we are 2 years later, and it's the same amount of people, and they can't do that all the time because this type of product doesn't draw any type of new audience, because people that aren't already into this look at it like, what the fuck is that going on? We've heard that from any lapsed wrestling fan. This is not what they're looking for. But so with the WWE releasing these people, they're mad because the WWE is $1 billion company and they can't pay these wrestlers. But of course you need to change talent on a fairly regular basis. And there's no reason to pay guys that you've had sitting around for 4 or 5 years and doing nothing. Let them go somewhere else and do something else if they can to make something out of themselves. The only problem is that there's really nowhere else to go to make money at that level besides AEW, which is rapidly filling up, and nobody else can pay at that level. And there's still not as many spots as there would have been if we had the territories. So, you know, some people are just going to be left out.
In reality, this isn't they can't pay you. The reality is they don't want you.
Right. And it's not, that doesn't mean that you suck. You may have done the greatest thing in the world last year, but how can we miss you if you won't go away? How can we look at the same wrestlers for years and years, all the time? Sure, they could, if they'd have been smart, what they wanted to do with OVW was make sure that we were not seen. They would pay us more money when we would come up with a deal where somebody was offering to put the tape on overseas and give us $1,000 a month. Or don't do this on Channel America. We don't want all these guys seen before we bring them up. Well, now NXT is seen just as much as Raw. So they're missing another developmental program. And a lot of people, well, the Performance Center. I know it's been a pandemic, but unless they get back to running fucking small spot shows in Florida, in front of a few people, just to get some of the greenest folks experience, you can't just go from the Performance Center now to NXT television, because that's national TV. So they're closing up all the fucking, local places that you could have learned what you were doing before you get on a television where everybody in the world is going to see you. But no, so you always need to fire wrestlers. You always need to change wrestlers. You always need to switch your roster around. And when they make egregiously bad decisions, yeah, that's notable. How could they fire so-and-so? Not just one person saying it, but a lot of people saying it. And sometimes you're like, well, shit, so-and-so doesn't have anywhere else to go. Well, that's actually not necessarily it's the WWE's fault in history because they ran all the territories out of business, but it's not their fault right now. It doesn't mean you weren't big there last year. Doesn't mean you won't be big there in 3 more years. But right now, you've been around there for a while. We need a break from you. Go away. Learn a new hold.
Maybe during that break, you can listen to some music on some brand new Raycon earbuds.
You know what? That's an excellent thing to do. Not only listen to music on the Raycon earbuds, but also listen to this podcast on the Raycon earbuds, because if you're an aspiring pro wrestler, you will learn more about the psychology aspect of pro wrestling by listening to this show than you will by going to the Performance Center. That's pretty obvious. But folks, whether you like music, Whether you like podcasts, whether you want to listen to somebody humming to themselves quietly, whatever it may be, the Raycon earbuds are the ones for you. The Raycon wireless earbuds in your ears can make all the difference with getting crisp sound at half the price of other premium audio brands. They look great. They feel even better. A range of colors, the customizable gel tips. It's comfortable in your ear. You don't even need to lubricate your ear. I did that at first. It's not necessary. Saved me a ton of money in KY jelly. The Raycons, you can take them around everywhere. Stacy uses these. As you know, I don't like to stick things in my ears, but Stacy uses them. It's got 24-hour battery life. How can you listen to 24 hours of anything nonstop? They're portable. You take them around anywhere. And the folks at Raycon are going to fix you up because they're offering 15% off all their products for our listeners. Anything they've got, 15% off. Here's what you got to do. Go to buyraycon, BUYRAYCON.com/JCE and get 15% off the entire order. So with these kind of prices, you can grab a pair and a spare in case your first pair gets stolen by somebody who's jealous of you for having them. 15% off at buyraycon.com/JCE.
That's right.
Well, it's certainly not wrong.
I wasn't prepared. That's why I was so emphatic about how right it was. Jim?
Yes. Brian.
I just had a piece right before you went to me. I ate a piece from, they're not on this week's show, but nuts.com.
You ate a piece right before I came to you.
A poontang pie. No, I had a caramel popcorn covered in chocolate. So I still have the taste in my mouth. I'm trying to talk to you. And it's not working well.
We've got so many fine sponsors. Wish we had enough fine questions to go along with them.